Namaste and Punarapi Swagatam to the second lecture of the course Advanced Level of Spoken Sanskrit. In this lesson, we are going to be looking at understanding the concepts of Karakam and Vibhakti, and this forms part of Module 1, which is a revision of nouns, the Subantaha that you've already been familiar with, as well as the verbs or the Tingantaha. So, in this particular lesson, I will be doing a short revision of the building blocks of Sanskrit sentence, words and the broad classification into the Subantaha and Tingantaha, as well as the sub-classifications. Last time I very briefly introduced the concept of Karakam. In this one, we'll take it a little deeper and understand the various Karakani and do it a little more from the way it is presented in the Shastras. So, we'll have quite a lot of Sanskrit and looking at how these concepts are really presented in the texts themselves. And then trying to understand what the Vibhaktis are and understanding the relationship of the Karakas with the Vibhaktis. And then we look at a verse with all the Vibhaktis and finally a quote on Sanskrit. So this was the table that we had looked at in greater detail in our previous lecture. So I'll just present it for you as a recollection of the different aspects of the Subantaha and all the codings that it had, and therefore the Tingantaha and all the codings that it had on that side. And also the Karakam. So we really focus on the Karakam in this lecture, and the Karakam Kim. So what is a Karakam? So Karoti iti Karakam, as we had seen, and Kriyan Vai Karakam. So Karakam is that which answers questions to regarding the verb specifically, and therefore we had 6 of them, excluding the genitive, which is included with the Vibhaktis but not there as part of the Karakam because it doesn't directly connect to the verb itself. As you can see that Vidyalayasya is not directly connected to Dadati in any way. So moving on, we have how many Karakas are there and what are the different types of Karakas. So Karakam Katividham Shat Vidham, there are 6 of them. What are they? So here you have Karta Karma Cha Karanam Sampradanam Tathaiva Cha Apadanadhikaranam Mityahu Karakani Shat. So what are these Karakas? Kartrikarakam, Karmakaranam, Karakam, Karanakarakam, Sampradanakarakam, Apadanakarakam and Adhikarana Karakam. As I mentioned earlier on, note that there is no Karakam to indicate possession or belonging, and that is because the relationship of the word of possession is not directly connected to the verb, but to the other Karakam. So it's a secondary level connection with the verb. So let's start looking at the definitions, and I would really invite you to follow the logic of how these Karakas have been defined, and what I'd really like you to do as we proceed is to apply your mind, because it really requires a certain degree of concentration to follow along. Sarvam Sanskrite Bhavishyati, Aham Sanskrite Atra Patitva Angla Bhashayam Api Bodhayishyami. So I will be reading out the Sanskrit, but I will also be explaining it in the English language. But what I really would like you to appreciate is the precision of thinking that has gone behind the definition of each one of these Karakas. Okay, and that is what is really appreciable about the Sanskrit language in general. So, Karta Kaha Swatantraha. Karta is from Panini's Sutra, which is 1454. And he says, Kriyayam Swatantrena Vivakshitaha Arthaha Karta Syat iti Sutrarthaha. So, Kriyayam Swatantrena Vivakshita Artha. So, it should have an independent connection with the verb. This is what it is saying. And Swatantriyam Nama Vyaparashrayatvam. So, what is the Swatantriyam? It is connected to the Vyapara or the process part of the verb. Evancha Vyaparashrayah Karta iti Phalitorthaha. So, you remember the verb we had discussed, as in fact the next line says Dhatvarthaha phalam vyapara cha iti uktam. So what is the dhatvartha? Dhatu, it is phalam, the fruit, and the process, vyapara cha iti uktam. So what is, who is the karta in that sense? Vyaparashraya. So this process, in whom the process is unfolding, that person is the karta. Iti uktam. So tatra vyaparasya yaha ashrayah saha karta bhavati. In whom that vyapara is taking place, that person is the karta. Yatha sudaha pachati. We are very familiar with pachakaha. Sudaha is another word for that. So sudaha pachati. Pach dhatorarthaha. So there is sandhi there. Pach dhatoho arthaha. Pakakriya. Paka vyaparaha. So paka kriya implies the action of cooking or the process of cooking. Sa kriya kutra asti. Where is that cooking taking place, or who is engaging in that process of cooking? Sude asti. It's in the suda or in the pachakaha, in the cook. Tatha cha paka kriyayaha ashrayah sudaha. So tatha cha paka kriyayaha, the action of the paka, ashrayah, the container of that, or the person in whom it resides, is the sudaha. Ataha sudaha karta. Yathava, another example, balaha khadati. Khad dhatoho arthaha bhakshana kriya. So the meaning of khad is the action of eating. Sa kriya bale asti. Where is that action unfolding? In the boy. So sa kriya bale asti. Ataha kriyayaha ashrayah balaha. So this action is taking place in the boy, and therefore the boy is the karta. Ataha balaha karta. So we're going to go down this way for all the karakas, okay? But I hope you are getting a feel of it. There's a lot of repetition, but I would like you to read along if you can, because that will give you the joy of this Shastric discourse. Astu? And atra sarala sanskritam asti. Yatha atra likhitam asmabhir sarvam api purvam intermediate stare sarvam api drishtam asti. So we've already been familiarized with the word forms that you will encounter, as well as the grammatical sandhis that are there in these karaka discussions that will follow. So, what is a karma? When do we identify a word as the object in the sentence? So, Panini here says, Karturipsitatamam karma, and that is the first chapter, Prathama Adhyaya, the Chaturtha Pada or the fourth Pada, and the 49th number of sutra in that. Okay, so it says Kartuhu kriyaya aptum ishtatamam karakam karma sanjnyam syat iti sutrartha. Now what does that mean? Kartuhu kriyaya aptum ishtatamam. So by the action of the agent, so whatever the actor is doing, by that action the most desirous fruit is assigned as the karma sanjnyam. So karta kanchit kriyam nivartayati. The actor is doing some action, and you remember action, every dhatu had the phalam and the vyapara part of it. So there's a fruit as well as the process part of it. So it says taya kriyaya kinchit phalam jayate. By that action some fruit is got. Tatcha phalam yatra sambaddham bhavatu iti ichhati tat karma sanjnyam prapnoti. So that fruit, whatever it gets attached to, that fruit that will be attached is attributed the karma sanjna. Tatha cha karta swa kriya prayojya janya phalena. This is a nice, fantastic samastha of the Sanskrit language, where it says, wait, I'll read the whole thing again. Tatha cha karta swa kriya prayojya janya phalena sambandhum ishyamanam karakam karma sanjam syat iti phalitortha. So what is he saying? He's saying tatha cha karta swa kriyaya, by his own action, prayojya, that is the objective, janya phalena. So with that object, the fruit that has been derived, sambandhum, adding or connecting it to that, ishyamanam, so whatever they are desirous of achieving, karakam, karma sanjnyam syat iti phalitaha arthaha. So that has to be called the karma karakam. Now, an example, yatha sudah tandulam pachati. So, the cook is making rice, tandulam pachati. Atra pach dhatoh artha viklipti rupam phalam. Okay. Tad anukula kriya cha. So, every time when they talk of a verb, you will get the phalam and the kriya aspect of it. Alright. So, what is the phalam here? Pach dhatoh artha. What does pach imply? Viklipti rupam phalam. So, there is a cooking and a transformation that is taking place of the grain into the rice. This is the fruit. This is the result. Tad anukula kriya. So, the action is also part of it, the process. Paka kriyayaha ashrayah sudah. The action of the paka is taking place in the, of the cooking is taking place in the sudah or the cook. So, sudah karta, based on the first rule. Kartuhu sudasya paka kriya janya viklipti rupa phalena sambandhum ishyamanaha tandulaha. So, now what is happening? Okay. So, the Suda's paka kriya, the action, is creating, is generating janya, vikliti rupam, it's generating this transformed fruit and attached to the most desirous thing that why is he doing the cooking? Because that's what he most desires in that action. What is happening is the tandulaha. Okay, the rice, that grain is undergoing this transformation into tandula. Ataha tandulaha, or that grain there, tandulaha, karma bhavati. That's how you will determine that, okay, that has to be the karma. So, balaha gramam gacchati. Now, why gramam? Gam dhatoh artha sanyoga rupa phalam. In the gacchati dhatu, gum, what is gum indicating? What is the fruit of gum? There is a connection, there is an arrival at the destination. Tad anukula kriya. Okay, and the action is also the process for that. Now, the same argument which will take place, which is that the action is there in the person, the destination is the desirable fruit to be got, which is the gramaha, and therefore it will be the karma karakam, which will be gramam. Another kind of a phalam. Chaitraha kupam khanati. Chaitraha, some name, is kupam, is a well, khanati is digging the well. So, khandhatoho arthaha. What does khandhatu mean? Avadarana rupam phalam. There is a breaking apart of the earth there. So, that's the fruit and the action in order to arrive at that fruit. And why is that action being taken place? What is the most desirous objective? It is the well. So, kupam, and therefore kupa will get the karma sanjayam and become kupam. Kupa is the pratipadikam. Because it gets the karma karakam, it will become kupam. Similarly, bhaktaha harim bhajati. Bhaj dhatoho arthaha tushtip rupam phalam. So, you have to find out what is the fruit. In the bhajanam, what happens when you're doing a bhajanam? The fruit is the feeling of satisfaction. And tadanukula kriya. And that's why bhajati is to arrive at that fruit. And the same thing, where is this fruit residing? In Hari. So, the action is in the bhakta and therefore bhaktaha. But that fruit of the ishtatamam is in Hari and therefore harim bhajati. Now, an important point to note here is that in verbs you have the transitive verbs which have an object like the sakarmaka dhatuhu, and you have the akarmaka dhatu or the intransitive verbs which are without object. So, like you have here chandraha vardhate. In the first case of a sakarmaka dhatu, like we have seen, where chaitraha kupam khanati, so chaitra is digging what? The well. The well is different, so the phalam is different and the karta is different. The doer is different and the well is different. And therefore, you have this separate attribution of the karma to that. Now, what happens here? Chandraha vardhate. Vrid dhatoho artha. What does vrid mean? Vriddhi rupam. So, the moon is growing. That's the fruit. And tadanukula kriyacha. So, the fruit is the growth and the growing is the kriya. Etat ubhayam api kartari chandre eva vartate. So, both are residing in the chandra itself. The fruit will also be for the chandra and the growth will also be for the chandra itself. And the growing process. And therefore, there is no separate karma there. It remains as the karta in this case. Now, let's look at the third karakam, which is karanam. And it says Sadhakatamam Karanam, and this is the first adhyaya, the fourth pada, and the 43rd sutra. So 1.4.43. It says Kriya Siddhau Prakrishtoparakam Karakam Karanasanyam Syat iti sutrarthaha. Now Kriya Siddhau, for the achievement of the result of the action, Prakrishtoparakam, that which is most instrumental, Karakam, that particular Karakam is the Karana Sanjnyam Syat iti sutrarthaha. Yat Swavyapara Samanantarameva Phalotpadakam Tat Karanam iti Phalitorthaha. So what does that mean? Yat Swavyapara, having done its action, Samanantaram eva, immediately after that, Phalotpadakam, it gives rise to the fruit. Tat Karanam, that is the instrument, iti Phalitorthaha. Now let's see an example. Yatha Ramaha Banena Ravanam Hanti. So what is it saying? Ramaha, with the arrow, kills Ravana. Handhatorarthaha. So what's the meaning of the handhatuhu? So according to you, what do you think is the fruit of the action of killing? You may say death, but there's an even more specific observation that is indicated here. It says Prana Viyoga Rupam Phalam. When the life leaves the body, that is the fruit, and Tadanukula Kriya, the action that will result in that fruit. Cha. Now, Hanana Kriyashrayah Ramaha. In whom is that action taking place? That action of the killing is being done by Rama. Ataha Hanana Kriyashrayah Ramaha. Ataha Saha Karta. Therefore, he is the actor. Prana Viyoga Rupam Phalam. So, where is that result that is taking place? In whom is that life leaving? Ravane Asti. It is in Ravana. Phalashrayatvat, because of the Phalashraya, he is the person in whom that fruit is taking place. Ravanaha Karma. Next, Dhanushaha Muktaha Banaha Gachan Ravanam Vidhyati Pravishati Samanantaram eva Pranaviyoga Rupam Phalam Ravane Bhavati. Now let's look at the statement. It says Dhanushaha Vimuktaha or Dhanushaha Muktaha. The arrow that is released from the bow, Banaha. So from the bow, the released arrow, Gachan Ravanam Vidhyati Pravishati. It pierces him. What happens immediately after? Samanantaram eva Prana Viyogaha Phalam Ravane Bhavati. That fruit is happening, of the Hanana fruit is happening in Ravana. Ataha Banasya Praveshana Vyapara Samanantarameva Prana Viyoga Rupa Phalam Utpannam. So Bana Pravesha Vyapara Samanantaram eva. Immediately after the arrow has entered into the heart, it has done its job, and immediately after Prana Viyoga Rupam Phalam, the fruit which is the departure of life from the body, that has happened. Utpannam. Ataha Banaha Swavyapara Samanantaram eva Prana Viyoga Rupa Phalotpadakaha Asti iti Banaha Karanam. So what is it saying? Therefore, Ataha Banaha Swavyapara Samanantaram eva Prana Viyoga Rupa Phalotpadakaha. It is the generator of the result of the departure of life soon after it has completed its action. Asti iti Banaha Karanam. Therefore, the Bana is the Karanam. And just one interesting point here is that this word Phalotpadakaha, you see there are so many different ways of saying the words here. So Phalotpadakaha is that which is the generator of that fruit, and therefore because it is the generator of the fruit, the Bana becomes the Karanam. Ataha Prakrishtoparakam Nama. So what do we mean by Prakrishtopakarakam? And Nama here is not the name, but it's said to be Vyapara Samanantaram Phalotpadakam Eva iti Jneyam. So what do we mean by Prakrishtopakarakam? We mean Swavyapara Samanantaram Eva Phalotpadakam. So immediately after completing its action or the purpose for which it was used, it is giving rise to the fruit. Eva iti jneyam. So by this word Prakrishtopakarakam, that is what is hinted. The fourth case or the dative case, Sampradanam. So what is a Sampradanam? It says Karmana yam abhipraiti sa Sampradanam. And this is the 1-4-32nd sutra. It says Karmana yam abhipraiti sa Sampradanam iti sutrarthaha. Alright, what does that mean? By the action, karmana, yam abhipraiti, towards whom it is directed, sa sampradanam, that receiver will be the sampradanam, is the intention of the sutra. What does that mean now? Karmana sambandhum yam abhipraiti ichhati. So by the action whom you want to connect it to, saha sampradanam syaditi phalitarthaha. That receiver will be your sampradana, will get the sampradana status. Deya dravyodeshyam sampradanamiti tatparyarthaha. So this is specially related to the action of giving particularly. It says yatha, example, pita modakam balaya dadati. Now, da dhatvarthaha hastadau sthapana rupam. To give means what? What is the phala that you get in that? Rupam phalam. Okay, so what is the phalam of the action to give? It means that there has been a placing with your hands. Okay, to give. So what I'd really like you to appreciate is the deep study of every inch of movements that has been taken into consideration. I mean, this really needs a lot of observation and precise articulation of what really is taking place. Okay, so he says hastadau sthapana rupam phalam tad anukula kriya, even the action anukula kriya. Then it says dana kriyashrayah pita karta. Who is performing? In whom is this action there? It's there in pita. Therefore, he is karta. Sthapana rupa phalam modake. What are you placing? That sthapanam, what is being placed? Ishtatamam or ipsitatamam. What is it? It is the modakam. So it is the karma. Ataha modakaha karma. Karma bhutena tena modakena pita kam sambandhum abhipraiti. So karma bhutena tena modakena pita kam. Whom is he trying? Whom is it intended towards? Abhipraiti means whom is this action intended towards? So it says karma bhutena modakena balam sambandhum abhipraiti. So this movement or this action is intended towards a connection with the boy, and therefore ataha saha balah sampradanam bhavati, and therefore that boy becomes the receiver and gets the status of sampradanam, or the dative case is attributed to the boy. Karma bhutam vastu yam adhigacchati. So the karma bhutam, the object towards whom it is going, saha sampradanam bhavati. That receiver becomes the sampradanam. Atra karma bhutam vastu modakaha balam adhigacchati, in this case, where the sweet is going towards the boy. Ataha balaha sampradanam. Therefore, the boy is the sampradanam. Isn't it brilliant? So, but I'd love you to read this by yourself and just get a feel. So, read it aloud and get a feel of how the rhythm of the grammatical logic is composed. So, what is apadanam? And apadanam is the ablative case, which means from. It is equivalent of the preposition from. When do we use the case from? Have you ever thought of it really? So let's see what Panini has to say here, and the commentators. I just want to specify that the rest of the writing is not done by Panini himself. He just writes in sutra form, but he implies all of this, which is then developed by other commentators. So here he says, Dhruvam apaye apadanam. This is the first adhyaya, the fourth pada, and the 24th sutra. So apaya means vishlesha or separation, and dhruvam means that which is avadhi bhutam, or that which is steady. Vishleshe sadhye avadhi bhutam karakam apadanam syat iti sutrarthaha. So he says vishleshe, wherever there is a separation, that which remains constant, on that thing you have to give the apadana karakam. And he says vibhagashrayah apadanam bhavati iti phalitarthaha. So in the separation of it, that apadanam has to be applied. Then you have an example, yatha parnam vrikshat patati. So a leaf falls from the tree. Pat dhaturarthaha. Have you ever thought how would you define the verb to fall? So he says adhodesha sanyoga phala rupam phalam. So when something falls, what happens? It comes in contact with the lower substratum, and that contact is the fruit of the action of falling. Tad anukula kriya, falling. Patana kriya shrayam parnam kartru. So he says, in this case, the leaf that is falling, it has the movement of the falling in it, and therefore it gets the karta sanjna. Just note that here it is kartru because parnam is in the neuter. Had it been a masculine word, it would have been karta. So avadhi bhutaha vibhagashraya vrikshaha. What has remained steady? The tree, and therefore the tree will get apadanam. Ataha vrikshaha apadanam. Yatra apadanasya prasaktihi tatra dvayoho sanyuktayoho vibhagaha bhavet eva. So when you, in the context of apadanam, there has to be this separation of two things. Okay. Yathatra sanyuktayoho vrikshaparnayoho vibhagaha jatah asti. In this case, the tree and the leaf have undergone a certain separation. Now, very interesting discussion that follows, which I have not given in greater detail here, but I will present before you. It says that why does it not get the apadana karakam? Okay, because the leaf is also separating. So why does the leaf not get the apadana karakam? And he says that the leaf has both in it. It has the karta because it has the falling action is there in it, and at the same time it has the separating action in it. Now, which one will it respect? Which one will take primacy? So he says, ekasya eva dvayoho prasaktau parasanjna eva kartavya. So Panini has given several rules, and he also ordains there that the second rule will get prominence over the first rule in case of a doubt. So he says, or an overlap. So he says, ashtadhyayam apadana sanyayaha, which is this one that we've seen. Apeksha kartru sanjna, which is the first, fourth and the 54th one. So you see, it's the 24th and this is the 54th sutra. This is the later one. And what is this one saying? That wherever there is an expectation, so in that fruit of the falling, there is an expectation in the leaf. And therefore, ataha parnasya kartru sanjna eva natu apadana sanjna. Alright. So I hope this is clear. And again, I am sincerely hoping that you would be trying to read along at least and appreciating the argumentation that underlies the perception of reality and the expression through language. Okay, so this is a fabulous aspect of the Sanskrit language. One more thing I wanted to mention to you is that each of these sutras that we are reading, they are single sutras, but you have several sutras also for apadana. Okay, so these are the most important one and the most popularly applicable ones. This is something you need to keep in mind. Moving on, the adhikaranam, which is the locative. I have written the sixth, but actually it is the locative and the corresponding to the Saptami Vibhakti and the seventh case. Alright, so here he says that Adharodhikaranam, and this is the fourth and the first chapter, the fourth pada and the 45th sutra. What does he say? He says, Kartri karma dwara tannishta kriyayaha adharaha karakam adhikarana sanyasyaditi sutrarthaha. Kartri karma dwara. So the relationship between the karta and the karma. Tannishta kriyayaha adhara. The action that they are performing, the substratum of that action, karakam, will be the adhikarana sanjna. And kartari vidyamana kriyayaha karmani vidyamana phalasya va adharah. So the vidyamana, so the action that is unfolding in the doer, or the karmani vidyamana phalasya, or if the fruit is experiencing that result, the substratum which holds both of them, adhikarana sanjna bhavati iti phalitartha, that will get the adhikarana sanjna. I'll give you an example. The first example he gives is with the kartrinishta kriyayaha udaharanam, is the example with the kartrinishtatvam, when adhikaranam is attributed or is connected with the actor or the karta. Balaha kate upavishati, so the boy sits on the mat. Upasarga purvaka vish dhatoho arthaha yat kinchit desha sanyoga rupam phalam. So ut plus vish, uppa plus vish indicates that there is some kind of a connection. Vish means to enter or to come in contact with, and that is the fruit here. And the action, of course, tadanukula kriyacha. Now, upaveshana kriyayaha ashraya. When you're performing this action and posing yourself, the ashraya, the support for that, is in the boy in this case, balaha karta. Okay, for him, he is the one who's undertaking that action, and the support the action will be the balaha. So, bale vidyamanaya kriyaya adharaha kataha. So, the action that is in the boy and the receiver of that action in terms of the support is the kataha or the mat. Ataha kataha adhikaranam. Alright. So, this is the locative which is connected to the actor or the karta. You can also have a location which is locative case which is connected to the karma or the object, like we have karma nishthayaha udaharanam sudaha odanam sthalyam pachati. So the cook is cooking the rice on the plate or on the vessel, in the vessel. So he says odanam. So here odanam is the fruit, and what is the support for that fruit? It is the dish, and therefore the dish will get your adhikaranam sanya or the adhikarana karakam. Uttamam. So I hope you have enjoyed this presentation of the karakam here. Now let's understand the relationship between a karakam and a vibhakti. But for that we need to understand what is a vibhakti. So the here it's defined as sankhya karaka bodhayitri vibhakti. So what is a vibhakti? It will tell you the number and the karaka. That which explains that is known as the vibhakti. So vibhakti is that which tells us the number and the karakam of a word. And for example, chhatraha shikshakam prichhati. Here the dvitiya vibhakti of the word shikshakam tells us the karma karakam and ekavachanam of the word. So what is the vibhakti indicating? The number. What is the number here? It's singular. And which is the karakam? It is the karma karakam, because shikshakam is the receiver of your of the prichhati, of the asking phalam. Okay. Now let's look at the vibhaktis, the 7 vibhaktis here. And what I'm going to try and do, you're already very familiar with the vibhaktis. I'll try and bring in the karaka component. So you have the prathama, which is the kartrikarake or the pratipatikarte. So it says balakaha khadati, swatantraha karta. So therefore balakaha gets the kartrikarakam. The second one, dvitiya. So here it is the second or the karma karakam. So what happens? Amba balakam pashyati, seeing. What is the most desirous object of her sight or of her seeing? It is the balaka, and therefore balakam gets the karma sanya or the karma karakam. Moving on, tritiya vibhakti. So he says saha hastena bhojanam khadati. So how does the bhojanam reach the mouth? With the hands. As soon as the hand does its action, the fruit has been enjoyed, and therefore hastena becomes the third or the karana karakam. Moving on, chaturthi. So the chaturthi is amba balakaya bhojanam dadati. So balakaya, who is the receiver of her action of giving? It is the balaka, and therefore the sampradana karakam. Next, panchami. So panchami, phalam vrikshat apatat, which we have just seen. So the falling of the fruit from the tree, the vriksha which is steady gets the apadanam, apadana karakam. Shashti. So the Shashti vibhakti does not have a karakam because it is not directly connected to the verb. So you have dola piyushasya griham gamishyati. Piyushasya is a sambandha. It is indicating the relationship. And kasya griham, piyushasya griham. Piyushasya gachati doesn't make, gamishyati doesn't make sense. So piyushasya sambandha, but not a karakam there. Okay. Next, saptami or the adhikarana karakam, related to the adhikarana karakam. Sarve bharatiyaha vidyalaye sanskritam patheyuhu. May all Indians study Sanskrit in their school. So, the action is studying, and studying where? In the school. So, that's the support of this action of study, as well as in this case it is the place where the Sanskrit also will take place. So, vidyalaye sanskritam patheyuhu. Saptami vibhakti or the adhikarana karakam. And finally, the sambodhanam, which is the 8th case or the vocative, which is accepted as a case, but it is not really there as a vibhakti, and neither is it there as a karakam. Why? Because the sambodhanam will take on the form of the prathama, the first form. Generally, there are certain exceptions, but generally there is a application of the first case as the vocative case as well. So you have He Ishvara Vishwe Korona Apagachatu Shantischa Bhavatu. Okay, so it's not just a sentence here, it's an ardent prayer that, oh Lord, and He Ishvara, you see, it is the Pratipadika form, it's the root form of the word here. It says Vishwe Korona Apagachatu, may it disappear, and Shantischa Bhavatu, let there be peace on earth, in the universe. Just another quick connection here between the Vibhakti Karakayoho Sambandha, the relationship between the two. So we've seen, and here the word Prayashaha has been included because it's almost always the case. There are various other permutations and combinations also possible, but to keep it simple, the most applied cases are the ones that we have been talking of so far. So atra kartrikarake prathama vibhaktihi bhavati, tat sambodhane api prathama bhavati. पुनः कर्मकारके द्वितीया विभक्ति, करणकारके तृतीया विभक्ति, संप्रदानकारके चतुर्थी विभक्ति भवति, अपादानकारके पंचमी विभक्ति भवति, पुनः अधिकरणकारके सप्तमी विभक्ति भवति, एंड अत्र संबंधे षष्ठी इति. ओके, तत्र कारकं नास्ति, कारक शेषे षष्ठी. So the avashishtam vibhakti dvayam. So these two vibhaktis, it's basically the षष्ठी, which is everything that is not coming into this can have the Shashti Rupa also. And Sambodhanam, as we have seen, is the one that takes on the Prathama Rupam or the Pratipadika Rupam very often. So these are called the Karaka Vibhaktis. So let's try and understand what an Upapada Vibhakti is. As we've seen that one of the kinds of Vibhaktis you can have are the Karaka Vibhaktis, which we have just looked at. The Upapada Vibhakti is when you can apply the different Vibhaktis in different contexts. So you have, for example, Bhikshukam Prati Dayam Kuru. Now there is no Karakam here, but because of the word Prati, the word Bhikshuka gets the Dvitiya Vibhakti. Astu. Moving on, you have Vriksham Prati, towards every tree, or Pari, around every tree, or Anu, for every tree. Jalam Sincha, pour the water for all these trees. So it again is a Dvitiya Vibhakti, but not in the case of a Karaka Vibhakti. Now, if you have a sentence where you have the possibility of a Karaka Vibhakti and an Upapada Vibhakti, which one will you apply is a question. So here you have a Karaka Vibhakti where it is Gurum Namaskaromi. So you've got Guru Namaha Karomi. Now because of Kra Dhatu that comes in, it becomes Gurum Namaskaromi. Okay, so you have to use the Karaka logic in that case to override the Upapada Vibhakti, which is Gurave Namaha. So because Namaha is there, it can also be Gurave Namaha. But when you have Gurum Namaskaromi, you have Namaha. So will it be Gurave Namaha Karomi? No, because it then follows the Karaka logic and it becomes Gurum Namaskaromi. Now at the end here, I've just tried to put all the words that we have been looking at and showing their interrelationship so that it becomes very clear. So we've got the vibhakti in one column, we've got the cases in another column, we've got the karaka names in another column, then the concepts that they're associated with along with their prepositions, and finally the prepositions in Hindi, because I get asked very often कि please आप हिंदी में भी हमें समझाइए कि क्या है इसका संबंध. So I've tried to make a table and put all of it together. I do take the help of some of these tables from the net also at times, so and then improvise upon them as required. So here we have prathama, which is the nominative or the karta, and it is the actor, subject, doer of the action, ne or ne in Hindi. Dvitiya or the accusative, the karma, the object or the destination, like for the gam dhatu specifically, and the English preposition is to, ko in Hindi. The tritiya is the instrumental or the karana, the karakam. It's the instrument with, by as prepositions. Se ke dwara, se ke dwara there. Chaturthi vibhakti is the dative case, the sampradana karaka, and it is the purpose, the receiver, the prepositions being for and to. So the receiver of the for and to, ko ke liye. And panchami vibhakti is the ablative case, which is the apadana karakam, and it represents the source or from as a preposition. Se alag karna. And the shashti vibhakti is the genitive, sambandha. So this is not exactly, that's why it's indicated like that. It's not a karaka as we've seen earlier. Relation, belonging, so of, belonging to our prepositions are associated with it. Ka, ki, ke, etc. Ra, ri, re as well. And then you have the saptami vibhakti, which is the locative case or the adhikarana karaka, and location or place, and the prepositions are in, on, at, may or pe, par. And then the ashtami, which is not exactly a vibhakti, but it is the vocative case, and again not exactly a karakam, it's a sambodhana equivalent, and it is calling hey, there, hey, are, etc. in Hindi. Alright, so maybe what I can do is, I'll just give you a sentence and I'll ask you to select which one of this it will be. Okay, so let's take the sentence. Balakaha ambayai upaharam dadati. Balakaha ambayai upaharam dadati. So balakaha will be which vibhakti? Prathama, uttamam. The second one, ambayai. Which one will that be? Which karaka will ambayai be? So dadati is the verb, and because it is dadati, the receiver will get the sampradhanam and therefore the chaturthi. Ambayai upaharam. Upaharam is a gift. So which case will that be? It will be the accusative, because it is the object. It's the most desired object of the action. Upaharam dadati. Kim dadati? Upaharam, and dadati is the verb. Uttamam. That was just to give you a chance to play around in terms of the application of this table that we have just seen. And finally, a shloka that is has all the vibhakti forms in it. So sarva vibhakti subhashitam. It says Shri Ramam Sharanam Samasta Jagatam Ramam Vina Ka Gatihi Ramena Pratihanyate Kalimalam Ramaya Karyam Namaha Ramatrasyati Kala Bhima Bhujago Ramasya Sarvam Vashe Rame Bhakti Rakhandita Bhavatume Ramatvame Vashrayah. Alright, so what is it saying here? Shri Ramaha Sharanam Samasta Jagatam. Of all the world, Shri Ramaha is the protector. Ramam Vina Ka Gatihi. So Ramam Vina. Because of Vina, it becomes Ramam, so it's not a karakam there. It is an upapada vibhakti there. So Ramam Vina Ka Gatihi. What hope is there without Rama? Ramena Pratihanyate Kalimalam. So the Kalimalam is destroyed by whom? Ramena. Okay. In this case, it happens to be a passive format here. Astu the Tritiya, but it's a passive voice here. Ramaya Karyam Namaha. So we need to salute. So again, we have this Upapada Vibhakti form here of the Chaturthi. Karyam means we must do. It's not work here. So we must salute Rama. Then Rama Trasyati Kala Bhima Bhujago. So by Rama, this huge serpent of time, which is death, should be afraid, or it should be it should fear Rama, then Ramasya sarvam vashe, everything is in the control of Rama. Rame bhakti rakhandita bhavatu me. So in Rama may my bhakti reside. Astu. And finally, and therefore the seventh vibhakti. And finally, Rama, He Rama, Tvameva Shraya. Hey Rama, you are my sole refuge. So just I'll try and do the tune for this. This is in the Shardula Vikridatata Chanda. It goes like that. Shri Rama Sharanam Samasta Jagatam Ramam Vina Kagatihi Ramena Pratihanyate Kalimalam Ramaya Karyam Namaha Ramatrasyati Kala Bhima Bhujago Ramasya Sarvam Vashe Rame Bhakti Rakhandita Bhavatu Me Ramattvame Vashrayaha. And in conclusion here, another writing of Sri Aurobindo, where he says that Sanskrit ought still to have a future as a language of the learned, and it will not be a good day for India when the ancient tongue ceases entirely to be written or spoken. But if it is to survive, it must get rid of the curse of the heavy pedantic style contracted by it in its decline with the lumbering, impossible compounds and the overweight of hair-splitting erudition. The Sanskrit articles in this number are learned and laborious, but they suffer heavily from this defect of style. If the contact established by the Sanskrit research can teach the new scholarship the patient thoroughness of the old, and the old the flexible of penetrating critical sense of the new, it will have done to both a great and much needed service. Okay, so the mother says, she says, we do not want this scholarly Sanskrit. We want a simple Sanskrit, but not a simplified Sanskrit either. So it's a great challenge for us to present this language in today's world, where everybody is invited to enjoy the beauty of the complexity of this language without getting discouraged by this magnificent complexity. I'd like to share with you the references and also mention that the entire Karaka section that we talked about is from the book Karakam by Sanskrit Bharati, written by Mahabaleshwara Bhatta ji. So please get those books, because you will get access to a lot more in them. Avashyam abhyasam kurvantu, and abhyasa karanena mahan anandaha bhavishyati iti mama ashwasanam. So do practice and you will be greatly enriched by just repeating what we have done today. Bahu dhanyavadaha.